topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello, and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yakzan. I am a core alignment coach, an emotional wisdom training specialist, and a diversity, inclusion, and equity educator. And I am so honored and fortunate to be able to host a conversation every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and W4CY, to hear and learn about someone else's life, someone else's background, someone else's story, expanding my understanding of human beings in the world, and just learning more about other ways of being. Today, the title of this show is Follow Your Dreams. And before I introduce our guest, I want to mention I have a website called knowwhatyouvantcoaching.wordpress.com. If you're interested in looking some of the programs I design as a diversity educator and a core alignment coach, much of my classes are around recognizing our biases and learning how to step out of patterns of biases that we've learned, internalized, and wanted to learn negative biases, but it's kind of part of our culture, and we can certainly unlearn them and create new patterns of thinking that are much more inclusive and create more belonging for everyone. And to me, that's happiness. That's happiness when everyone in the room is seen and heard and feels like they belong. And that actually is how I felt when I stepped into the beautiful design shop of our guest today. Her name is Jeannie Johng-Nishikawa. I'm learning to say that correctly. Beautiful name. And she is a fashion designer and an author. And I got to meet her by it was just kind of amazing alignment and a great privilege. I had the privilege of being in a position to find someone to help fix my daughter's dress. And thought we were out of luck. It's a rare opportunity to even consider doing something like that. And in a panic, and I thought, oh yes, do what my children tell me to do, which is Google. And I found this amazing person around the corner within 5 minutes of where we lived, who miraculously pulled together an incredible reshaping of a dress that was just a part of why we were impressed by her. So let's bring her in, and then you can see yourself. So Jeannie, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. And I just want to say a little bit more about how, honestly, the second we stepped into your shop, where you are sitting now, which is really lovely to see in the background, you were just so immediately welcoming. My daughter was just mentioning how, like, immediately the atmosphere you create, it's as if you had invited us to come in for tea, and as if you'd known us for years. And then and she also said, and within 10 minutes she figured out exactly what should happen to this dress. Like, your designing ability is phenomenal.
Thank you.
So I want to touch on several things with you because you're also an author, but I thought it might be first to start with, how did design come into your life? How did you become a designer, and why did you choose designing fashion?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and since I was 4 years old, my mom taught me how to sew.
Mm.
And so something that I mean, my mom made everything. She knitted our hats to sweaters to jackets, even socks. So I just thought it was
Wow.
so amazing. And she even taught me how to plant linen or flax seeds from
Mm.
seeds to production. I remember
Wow.
sitting and she would like produce yarn, and I have to open my hands and watch her do that. But it's just something that I didn't know anything better. I just did it. But when I was 10 years old, I knew that I wanted to be a designer. Yeah.
Wow. At age 10.
Hmm.
So she made everything from your hats to your socks
Everything.
virtually. Oh
Hmm.
my gosh.
Yeah.
That
So
is so rare. May I ask where that was?
in South Korea.
In South Korea. Okay, you had a
Hmm.
farm. And was the farm, did you say it was flax
Flax, I
seeds?
mean, we grew many things, but
Okay.
flax seeds or linen or hemp, we also did hemp. Um,
Wow.
Hemp fiber, that's right. We boiled it and stripped the stem and weave them. So even hemp as well. Hmm.
So that was the main production. What were with different types of fiber?
I would say we did more hemp than linen. It's something that we did in our culture. As soon as you're born, you need to learn to sew or weave and sew and make hemp uh, clothing for your burial. So it's the minute you're born, you are planning your death, which is kind of strange, but
Hmm.
we are taught to weave. Well, we have the men's quarter and women's quarter, and women get together and sew, weave, and embroider. I mean, we did a lot of things. So it's just something that came natural to me, and I just loved it. And you're around surrounded by happy people. So, and then when I think of sewing, and that's probably why I have this design studio. I mean, I don't need to work, I don't need to do this, but my mom passed away 8 years ago, and I just feel connected to her, and I feel like she's with me. So that's
Mm.
probably why I continue to do what I do. Yeah, yeah. And it's so fun to um, work with each bride because I mean, I design custom wedding dresses, but I also redesign. I have brides coming in with their mothers or grandmothers, others' wedding dresses, and I redesign it to more of a modern style, or I alter them, and I try to make each bride as if I'm making a custom dress for them. And so it's just so fun to work with the brides. Who wouldn't? I mean, it's so whimsical, and all these dresses are so pretty. And I've been doing this since 1991, and I have done thousands of wedding dresses. Yeah,
Wow.
it's fun.
Wow. It's probably impossible to keep a photo of every one you do, but do you do some kind of recording all the different alterations and designs you've made?
Whenever I have time, but right now I've been so busy. But I have an Instagram, so I post whenever my clients send me their professional wedding photos. Then I try to post them. But right now I'm really behind because I had to finish from January 3rd to January 31st of this year. 31 wedding dresses came in. And I had to finish almost 70 by end of June, and now I have 54 wedding dresses that have to be done by end of October. So it's pretty crazy.
Wait a second, that was more than one a day in January? Re
Yes. I mean, just
Wow.
about 31 wedding dresses came in this year, so it broke
Wow.
record. Yeah,
Wow. And
definitely.
I'll just say out loud your Instagram for anybody listening now, at designed underscore by underscore Jeannie, and that's
Hmm.
Jeannie.
Hmm.
And thank you for the banner, DJ, at designed underscore by underscore Jeannie. Wow. Oh, so you have some photographs on there, and that's also how people can contact you.
Hmm. Yes.
Wow. So that is fascinating. I kind of want. I did not know that the cultural practice of after you're born, you're taught these skills right away from a very early age, and
Hmm.
you're with women if you're female, and you're with men
Hmm.
if you're
Aunts and
male.
uncles. Hmm.
And you are, how do you start, what is like the, I don't know if you think of it as training, but what's the guidance about how you start thinking about your own death and designing
Um,
clothing for your own death? I'm fascinated at such a young age. How is this idea introduced to you?
in our culture, we call it a Yangban burial process, and I cover that in one of my chapters in my book. Yangban means noble family, and we have servants too. But the servants usually helps a lot. They work in the fields, but the nobles have women and men's quarter. And by the time you're 7 years old, the boys and girls has to be separated. Just as the cucumber flowers on the seventh day knows that it's going to produce. There's a male and female differences even in plants and animals. I don't know if you knew that, even
Mhm.
trees. And so on the on the seventh year, we are separated from boys go to boys section and the girls goes to the women's section. And that's what my mom told me. The cucumber flowers even know that you're a boy or you're a girl. And so you can even sleep together in the same room. It has to be separated. Um, and then it's just something my mom told me is that the linen or the hemp fiber makes you, because when you die, you go back to the natural stage, going back to the earth, which we call it Adame, which means earth. And then you go back and you become a fertilizer or whatever. And my mom said
Mhm.
that the hemp fiber breaks down your body faster,
Mm,
is what she told me. So we want to make sure we bury the deceased person. Well, we have to bury them within 2 hours. We
mm,
have to clean them in warm water from head to toe. And then we put socks and gloves. And of course, you make these throughout your stages of your life. And many
mm.
babies didn't make it to their 100th day, so
Aw.
they have to make these type of things, and you wrap them. Well, for babies, they wrap them in the hemp or linen fiber, and then you put them in a pottery, and then you flip them and you bury it so the animals don't dig and get the babies.
Mm,
And so you make a hat, you gloves, and you um, put their clothes, and you tie them in 7 sections, starting with the neck all the way down to the feet.
mm,
And so these are some of the things. And then the final stage is the blanket, and you wrap it and you tie them, and then you put them in an untreated pine casket. And
mm.
we cannot mix two woods or metal and wood. It has to be untreated pine casket so that you go back to the earth and fast.
So it'll decompose completely.
hmm So this is something that my mom taught me and talked about it. So yeah, the dying is part of life.
Mhm.
So so I'm not, and so we were taught not to be afraid of dying because it's just part of nature. So, and it goes with sewing. So I just feel blessed to learn to sew and to be around my mom, and I miss her very much.
Mm.
Yeah.
What a beautiful and real, tangible way to stay connected
hmm
to
So I
her.
still feel like she's with me because I'm half of her, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so she's still alive through me.
Yeah.
So I just remember when I sometimes get challenged with certain, it's really rare for me to be challenged with difficult garment. I mean, your daughter's dress was a little challenging, as you recall, but I just remember what my mom said to do. So it just sometimes I'm like, hey, mom, what should I do? And within a few minutes, it just comes naturally for me to know what to do. It's just something very natural for me to do. 'Cause
Do you see it in do you see it like, do you actually see it visually in your mind?
Yeah, because there's a big,
Yeah.
even designing, drafting a pattern between men and women are so different too. So I just could visualize just really nothing that's new designing to me. It doesn't matter what nationality or culture you're from. The men and women's body forms are different. Men's shoulders are a little broader than women. Women's necks are a little more thinner. And then we have the chest, so we design it a little different. So you just draft a pattern. I don't know, it just comes natural to me. Just watching my mom how to do things. So she was my teacher. Even 2 months before she passed away, she would sit across the room. She's like, "You're doing it wrong." I'm like, "Mom, how can you see?" I was working on a one men's jacket, shortening of the sleeves, and I was in a hurry, so I was kind of doing it really fast. And she's like, "No, do it over." I'm like, "Mom, you can't see from there." She's like, "No, it's wrong. Do it over." So even though it takes a little longer, you have to do it right.
Mm.
And so that's something that my mom told me: do whatever you do, do it start from finish, do it carefully, and do it right, so you don't have to do it again. So it's really rare for my clients to bring their garments back to me. And I learned that from my mom since I was 4.
Mm.
Hmm.
Wow, since you were 4 years old,
Hmm.
and you said that is in one of your books?
About the burial process, yes, it's called Yangban burial process. But the sewing part, yeah, I don't think I put that on. Yeah.
But the whole burial process.
Hmm.
That's so interesting because it's certainly that would totally shape how you feel about death and dying as just a part of the cycle of life. I mean, I'm just imagining the life of difference it is when you are enculturated with acceptance and nothing else except acceptance and planning and expectation for dying. It must be really um, searching for a word.
It'd be kind of scary for some people if you don't know where you're going. But I was taught as a kid that the minute you're born, you're gonna die. Just like my mom told me, just like the shadow or the flowers. One in morning it blossom, in the evening it withers. And she said life is like that. And so, yeah, she never spanked me or raised her voice. She always spoke to me in parables.
Hmm.
Um, I remember when I was a teenager and I would say something negative or something mean about my sisters, and she would say, "Lie down." And I say, "Why?" She goes, "Lie down." And I would, and she said, "Spit." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to spit because it will come back to me." She goes, "That's right. Don't talk about your siblings or your family because it will come back to you." That's how
Hmm.
she spoke to me.
Wow. Wow.
So,
So,
so
but
whenever I
yeah.
say something, yeah, anything I say something or think of something negative about my children or my spouse or sibling, I just kind of like hold my tongue because I remember what my mom said. Mhm.
How many sisters do you have?
I have 4 sisters and 1 brother.
And did they all learn how to sew the same thing, the same way?
Not my brother, my sisters, but they're not as good because sewing, you have to be patient, and it's an art too. And so I don't know. My mom told me that I have the gift to visualize a piece or and put together, and my sisters are all in a rush to get things done. And with sewing, you can't rush things. You have to kind of think of each client, or since I mostly work with the brides, they're so unique, so beautiful. And she also told me the wedding dress itself is dead, but the person or the bride who's wearing it is alive,
Hmm.
and it's form of energy. So she told me to like pay attention to each bride's energy, and it's so true. And so you just fit or pin the way the body. So I don't even really have to tell the bride what, unless they ask me. I just usually, I would say 90% or 95% of my brides usually come in and say, "Jeannie, I don't know what to do. Just tell me, just make it fit right for me." And so I just pay attention to the body, and I start from the head, from the shoulder, and go all the way down. So I don't even hem until the last minute. And I just pay attention to the bodies. And a lot of the women's, one shoulder is higher than the other, or
Mhm.
this one sleeve or one arm is longer than the others. And so you just pay attention to all that and just focus on each bride as they're the most beautiful, most unique person, which is true. And so I try to make it like it's custom fit. and it's a lot of work, and it takes average about 25 hours to work on the dress, sometimes longer, but it's worth it. And the brides come in and they just love it, because you're working not just any dresses, you're working on wedding dresses, and it is so important to them. Like birth and marriage and death, those three things are really important in human lives in all cultures, I think. So I think about that and making sure that each bride, I make it to fit them and they feel the most beautiful. Yeah. And I don't let them leave until they're happy. I don't want them to come back, or I don't want to waste their time and my time. So I just want to make sure they don't leave here until it fits, and that they don't leave until they know how to bustle, French or American bustle. Because a lot of the times when you're at a wedding or a reception and you want to dance and your dress is not bustled, right? And it's stressful. So I make sure I teach them how to do that before they leave.
What is
Yeah.
bustling? I don't even know what bustling is.
Yeah, so many wedding dresses in the Western dresses have a long train, and after the ceremony and the pictures, they can't just walk around with a long train, right? So we have to bustle them, and then there's two ways to bustle, which is French or an American bustle, and the French bustle goes under the skirt, and American bustle goes over the skirt, so that they could walk and they could dance, and so.
So is it carrying it? Do they carry it, or is it pinned up?
It's not pinned up. It's well, I guess it is pinned up by hook and eye with pearls.
I see. I see.
Yeah,
I'd never heard that.
you, but I have so many right now. I have 54 wedding dresses I'm working on right now.
Wow.
Yep, and they're from all over the Bay Area, in San Diego, and I had a bride from Chicago and Florida, and 3 from Houston this summer, and then Tahoe. I have it from all over, but from Bay Area, seems San Francisco. They find me through Google, so it's pretty amazing.
Right, and I bet through word of mouth, there must be so many recommendations of you.
Yeah, through their mothers or sisters or aunts or their friends. So I'm so honored. Yeah.
And I want to get back more to your writing, but I also would like to mention that you were, for almost 3 years, you were on a multicultural forum for the Yolo County District Attorney's Office.
Yes.
And I just wanted to bring that into the conversation and ask, what was the task of the multicultural forum for the DA's office?
Yeah, so Multicultural Community Council, and we call it an MCC, was created by our District Attorney Jeff Resick and Dr. Jesse Ortiz, I believe. And it was to facilitate conversation between Yolo County residents and the DA's office to get understanding of the criminal justice system for like racial and social inequality.
So
I was
go
ahead.
So in any way, can you sort of give us an idea of like what you did? Like you helped people connect in the community, or get to know each other community, or you educated the law enforcement side, or?
Yeah, so I'm not, so most of the council, I mean, the members are like attorneys, I guess, lawyers, and I don't have a background in law, so I was really surprised that they invited me. But they felt like Jonathan Raven, the deputy district attorney, is the one that I guess invited, and also Jeff invited me too. And they felt that it would be, I don't know, helpful for me to be part of the council to help out. But it was, I learned a lot from them, more than they learned from me, I think, because I just, I guess I didn't have the law background or the criminal background, so I was really fascinated. But they wanted to make sure that we, the DA, the DA's office was fair, because there were some rumors about targeting African Americans or the Latinos, or I mean the Hispanics. So they just want to make sure that they wanted to hear from the outside. But for me, it's an Asian American, so I represent a Korean and Japanese American. But usually the Asian communities don't have that much crime. So I just felt like I didn't have too much to give. But one thing I told them about Asian culture that you may not have known is that we were taught not to have a direct eye contact. So in America, they think that if you don't look at someone's eyes directly, that you're hiding something, that you're not telling the truth, right? But in my culture, if you do that, that's considered disrespect. And so when we're talking to authorities like the police officers or your parents or your teachers or professors, we can't look at their eyes directly because then you're being disrespectful. So I brought that to the MCC. So they thought it was interesting because they didn't know. So now that when they arrest some Asians, they might not want to look at them and they might think, oh wow, this guy is probably, or her is hiding something, but now they probably will think twice, right? So that's something that I brought it to their attention.
That one little piece of information, I'm sure, makes a big difference for a lot of people. That's so important.
Yep. Yeah, and I learned a lot from them. I mean, they work really hard. Before I would look at the district attorney's office, like so afraid, or the police officers, like I've been afraid, like I don't know, you just get nervous when they approach you, right? But then I realized they were just down to earth, very humble, hardworking. Jeff and Jonathan and all the other board members were very, very open and helpful and very concerned for the community. So I really appreciated the experience.
I'm sure they appreciated your input.
Hope so.
So what brought you to Yolo County?
Well, I'm married to my husband who has a family farm, or the family corporation, Nishikawa Farms Incorporation. And they were farming in Yolo County in Solano since I believe 1950. So I met him at my business in Elk Grove, and he just graduated from UC Davis. And then I guess his dad told him not to come to the farm. Actually, by the time we were dating, they were just slowing down their farm because they were farming since the 1950s, but they still run the corporation. And my father-in-law wanted my husband to be closer to him and help run the family farm. So we moved to Davis.
And what were they growing? What was the farm?
Tomatoes. I believe they're growing mostly field crops like corn, wheat, sugar beets, I believe, and all around Davis. And I think their last property was in South Davis. But yes, they farm, I think, mostly for Hunts and Campbell's tomatoes.
Big.
Yeah.
And what you said you still love gardening. So do you have your own gardens, right? Do you have time to even think about gardening?
Yeah, it's a must. I do. We live in about a third of an acre here in Davis. So I have fruit trees all around from front to the back. I have fruit trees everywhere. And then right now I'm growing tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants, bell peppers, jalapeno peppers, squash, Korean squash, zucchinis. It's hard. So sometimes after I sow until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I wear a headlamp and then go and water the plants. So that's what I did today too. It's a must. So I could be connected to the earth, connected to my mom and my dad. My dad taught me, he passed away last year, and before he passed away, he taught me how to farm and how to do things for like 11 months before he died. Oh, and I was also growing sesame seeds right now, or perella, which is kind of like a wild sesame seed. And that's something I would like to go back to farm within 5 years to produce perella or wild sesame oil. is something that I'm planning to do right now. So I'm doing a little bit of minor research at my
Mm.
own little farm land that we have.
Wow. So you would grow enough sesame seeds to press into oil.
Hmm. Yeah, since we are surrounded by olives, I figure somebody would know how to press sesame oil. I mean, I know how to do it, but we do it manually with a wood press. But hopefully, I could find somebody who could do it. If not, we could probably build one. But that's something that is my long-term goal, or 5-year goal, or 5-year dream, to produce my sesame oil to target the Asian Americans in the United States.
Mm, nice.
Hmm. That's what I'm
And
planning.
yeah, speaking of dreams,
Hmm.
um, t tell us about your path of following your dreams.
Hmm.
And did you have did it feel like it unfolded naturally because farming it was in your genes, in your hands, designing and sewing all your life, but how did you turn it into a business and how did you become so successful?
Hmm. I just love some. I guess my parents never, like typical Asian families, like you have to be a doctor, lawyer, an engineer. My parents just said, we're not educated. We don't have the financial resource to help educate all 6 children, and that's the main reason why we immigrated to the United States. Because
Mm,
back in South Korea, until early 80s, there were only private schools. The public school
mm,
in South Korea wasn't even not established until, I believe, yeah, mid 80s, maybe 90, early 90s.
mm,
And so my parents brought us to this country because my dad, for some reason, knew that the English language would be an international language at the time. Back then, we had to learn Chinese was our second language. First was Korean, and then
mm,
Chinese was our second language. Now English is second language. But before that, for I don't know, for hundreds of years, um, yeah, we had to learn Chinese.
mm,
Um, and so my parents never told us to. They told me just go after what you want to do, and I love fashion, so I study fashion. And so I'm telling my kids the same thing: follow your dreams, because then your soul will be content. And while before you have obligations like spouses or children to take care of, you should go after your dreams. And if it fails, then at least you won't blame anyone, right? You'll say, I tried. And then you could go back to do what you need to do to survive and support your family. So I just think it's important. So the 3 things I love is fashion, textile, right? Then I love to read and write. And then third, I love to, I don't know, grow things, farm. And that's just something that we need to do to survive. We need to eat.
yeah,
So I'm just doing all 3 things I love. Yeah.
that is wonderful.
Hmm.
And
And so,
go
mhm.
ahead.
And then the main purpose of continuing to design is the money that I make from here. The majority of it does go to feed the orphanages in 55 African countries. Not all 55. Right now, I think I have like 13 countries that I support with the money that I make here. And then I'm building a school in Tanzania right now in a city called Umbea to honor my mom. So that's what I'm doing. And
And how
something,
did
yeah, because I remember coming to this country in 1978 and watching a TV, and they were showing us some TV with all these African babies with the big bellies. And they were supposed to be around my age, and I was so shocked to see a big belly. And because I grew up on a farm, so I never felt poor or hungry. So I just
Mhm.
couldn't understand. So I thought, if I have money someday, then I would love to go to Africa and feed the kids. But I back then I thought Africa was one country. I didn't know there are many different countries. I believe there's 55, and South Sudan is the youngest country, right? Because South Sudan and North Sudan was divided, right?
And,
Recently.
and some people consider it one big country.
But I didn't know
Right
as
now.
a kid. I just thought
Yeah.
it was one country, but I didn't know there were many countries. So in 2019, I had the opportunity to go to Tanzania and visit the country and tour some of the orphanages. So it was just an honor. And I was so surprised. I didn't see babies with big tummies. There were abundance of food, and it was pretty amazing. But still, they have some orphanages up in Arusha, which is near Kilimanjaro. And so I have one orphanage there. I believe there's between 25 and 27 children at the ages of newborn to 18 that has AIDS. So I send money there yearly for them to buy soap. We think they want food, but actually they want soap. They want soap and shampoos and really basic things. I was really surprised. So yeah, they could buy soaps.
So there are 13 different schools or
Well, 13 different
organizations.
orphanages. Yeah, so I have one child in Mali, which is in West Africa. Um, in Ghana, I work with Dr. Nishiki. I send her money for that particular when she's helping with animals. Because in Africa, in many countries, the United States think of their pets like, cats and dogs like they're like your family members, right? But in many third world countries, it's life and death. They don't have luxury to have pets and have pet food. I think the United States might be the only countries that has. I was so shocked with pet food, right? And so they don't think of cats and dogs as their family members. They think of them as a guard, or especially a dog as a guard dog, I guess. And when I was in Tanzania, dogs were in cages, not the monkeys. Monkeys were running around all over, and the dogs were in cages. I thought it was strange. And then when I went to Zanzibar Island, which is between Madagascar and Tanzania, they didn't have any dogs. I said, "What happened?" They said, "Oh, this is Zanzibar is about 97% Muslim, and we don't have dogs. We could have cats, but not dogs." So I thought that was really interesting.
That
But
is
yeah, I
interesting.
visited an orphanage in Morogoro, which is another city. And then I have two schools or in Uganda that I work with. One, I guess, a gentleman that I met. He's deaf, so he helps. I think he has a radio channel or TV show now that teaches sign language in Uganda. So whenever he asks me to send money, I also send money there. And then I also support two orphanages in Madagascar. Um, yes, and send food, and I would send them money, and I work with one young lady there, and she buys the food like chicken or rice and vegetables, and she goes and visits them. And then I also help, like in South Africa. You'd be surprised, but in South Africa, it's the girls. They don't have money for feminine menstrual pads. It's about food or menstrual pads, and they usually use paper, newspaper, and leaves, right? But we are so blessed with so many inexpensive tampons and menstrual pads, right? In Africa, in South Africa, and many African countries, they don't have that luxury. I don't know if you knew that. So I try to help with that. And then in Ethiopia, I work with one heart surgeon. With whenever he asks me for money, I will send money there with children who's dying of cancer, so they could be closer to the hospital. So with their child, so I do that, and just by sending $250, the like couple families could stay near the hospital with their child for like 2 months. The U.S. dollar goes so far, so I do things like that.
Would you say that's part of your upbringing is giving and supporting people who have needs that are unmet that you
I
learn
just
about?
probably just by watching my mom service. I think service is really important. But my mom just, especially where I'm from, it's Yesan, Yesan. So in South Korea, everybody knows the people from Yesan, which is north, 2 hours north west of Seoul, or Seoul, which is the capital of South Korea. That's where the noble families live, straight 90 degrees from the palace. Um, I and my mom taught me to just give. And when you have strangers, so people, again, South Koreans know that, hey, you're from Yesan. Oh my goodness, you guys are very generous people. I think that's what we're known for, generous people. Even if strangers come in town, we would bring them in and feed them and give them, like if I take my friends to drop me off to see my relatives, when we leave, my uncles or aunts will give them boxes of sweet potatoes and acorn jellos and fresh tofus and sesame oils or tomatoes, whatever they have, they would just give freely to my friends that dropped me off. Yeah, so very giving.
Wow.
Yes. So
I imagine if you there would be an absence for you in your life if you weren't giving, given
and then
the way they.
and one other thing my mom told me to do is when you give someone, give the best, like the produce or fruits. My mom would pick the prettiest and the freshest one, and she'll give it to her neighbors, and she'll eat the with spots or a little bit older or whatever. She'll eat them, but the prettiest and the freshest ones, she'll give it to the others. So I do the same thing. Yeah, so that's the key my mom told me to do. And then also told us never to pick not even a fruit from a farm or a tree from neighbors, because that's considered stealing. So I remember my mom telling me that. So I told my kids that. So hopefully they're not picking any fruits or flowers from farm or garden. Yeah. Give the best.
Wow. I have not been to my father's country of origin, but it's bringing back images, and I've seen of his family had a lot of fruit trees, orchards, and they did actually have olive trees and press oil. And
Wow.
that's when you're talking about pressing sesame seeds and sesame oil. I was picturing these old oil pressing machines.
Oh yeah, you gotta go back if you can. I don't know if it's possible, but you should
Yeah,
go back
I would love
and
to.
visit. Mhm.
Well, there's so many more questions I want to ask you, but I wanted to make sure I tapped more into your writing. I'm curious, when you write something, do you originally write it in your first language, or do you write it? What language
Well,
do you write
now
in?
I write in English, even though English is my second language. I dream in English. So that's why the title of the book is Dream in English. Because when I was in seventh grade, one of my friend asked me, do you dream in English or Korean? And I didn't even think about it. So
Mm-hmm.
that moment, so I went home and thought about it. And then before I went to bed, and I thought about it. And then next time I had a dream, I noticed I was dreaming in English, because I remember dreaming in Korean. But then after, I would say I started dreaming in English probably around 6 months after I arrived to this country, and I have never went back dreaming in Korean. I've
That's so
tried,
interesting.
but I haven't yet. So, but someone says if you dream in a new language, then you have mastered the language. But I don't think I have, because English is such a complicated language to me. Because there are some words that you have to pronounce the way it spells, or sometimes you have, because especially in English, in Korean, we don't have pronouns or
Oh,
articles.
that's oh,
So that was
interesting.
challenging. So my editors or my husband, when they read the original book, they're like, hey, you forgot this and that. And it's something that I didn't even think about. And then there are some words that there is no translation from Korean to English.
Mm.
Like, for example, when you're describing the flavor or the smell of sesame oil, in Korean we say 고소하다, but in English there is no translation. I even spoke with some of the linguists or professors, and they said, no, we don't have a word for that, which is fascinating. So
That is fascinating.
the only closest word that I could find was mellow
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
describe the flavor of sesame oil.
Hmm.
So that's kind of interesting. But yes, and I usually write title first, and then
Hmm.
I break it down into chapters, and then that's how I write. And that's how I wrote my book.
Wow. And has it gotten translated?
Yes.
Your
Oh, yes. I published 3 books.
Can you tell us the titles of your books right now?
Yeah, they're all Dreaming English, or it's just second edition, and then I translated my first book to Korean. So yeah, so it's selling in Korea right now, English, or the Korean version and the English version. But I haven't really focused on selling my books because I've been so busy with the design work.
It
Yeah,
sounds fascinating. So I just want to make sure I understand. You've written 3 books, or there are 3 editions of
3.
Dreaming in
Oh,
English?
yes, I guess so. Yes, first edition and the second edition, and then
Okay.
translation. Yes, and then I am writing a
Okay.
novel called My Sister's Secret. So I finished about 3 chapters. So hopefully I'll finish before I die. It's a
Wow.
mystery book. I'm working on a novel. And then I was working on a cookbook with my mom before she passed away. But cookbook is hard. Not only, I just thought, oh, you take a picture and you write the ingredients and you put it together. But no, you got to do measurements, and, it has to be consistent. So I'm going to hold off on that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
that would be hard.
we only have 24 hours a day, and I wish there were 50 hours a day. Then I could do all the things I love to do. But,
It sounds like you get a lot in.
mhm.
Well, we just have like a couple minutes left. Do you want to share like a closing message? And then also, I would love you to say out loud how people can reach you on social media for those who are listening and can't see the banner that DJ's streaming across. So,
Trying to
what's your
think.
thought? I know you wanted to call this Follow Your Dreams.
Yeah, definitely follow
But
your dreams, especially when you're young, especially during the recession when a lot of young folks, or even it's never too late to go after your dreams. Um, Not just think about working for others, but think about the things that you could create and things you love to do that could turn into a business. I
mm,
think that's important to do during recession or challenging times. But I would say, well, we have only one body, one life, right? So take care of yourself by eating
yeah,
well, think positive, surround yourself with positive people, be genuine, be honest to others, but be honest to yourself. Then you could sleep at night at peace,
mm,
peaceful sleep. And then I would say, uh, hmm, definitely service to others. Try to serve people, and then listen to your inner voice. Like that's what I would say, and then prepare to make mistakes because you learn from
mm.
mistakes. If you think you're perfect or do things perfect, you're not going to learn. So most things that I learn in life is from mistakes that I made, and try
For
not to
sure.
do it again.
That
hmm
is the
And
best way to learn.
And then the last thing my mom said to me before she died is say what you want to say and do what you want to do. In this country, we still have freedom of speech, so we could um, say what you want to say. I mean, well, think twice before you say. Make sure you say positive
Yeah,
things to encourage people,
good
and
point.
not try to put people down. Because you
Great
don't know what
point.
they're going through, right? They might
That's
have just
right.
lost their spouse, or I mean, just anything. They might have lost jobs, so um,
Wow.
just be
Well,
patient.
thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you. We really
Oh,
appreciate your
thank
time, your energy, your service to other people, towards other people, your generous giving to orphanages and different places for different reasons, and for your beautiful designs. And I can't wait to get your book. And if people want to reach Jeannie, it's at designed by Jeannie,
and
Jeannia. And I
mhm.
want to thank everyone for listening and for watching. and our producer and our engineer. And I want to say, be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern at W4CY or Talk 4 TV. And may we all have enriching conversations in diversity this week.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech